we might get started for the next session. So my name is Richard. I'm Richard Robinson. I'm actually from the ANU, but I'm also on the Moodle Posium Organising Committee. And it's my pleasure to introduce Robin Watson from CIT Solutions, who's going to talk today about Is Your Forum Silent and how to foster meaningful engagement using the forum tool. So I'd like to introduce Robin.
Hello everyone. So just a little bit about my background. I'm a new Moodler, and less than 2 years ago, or more than 2 years ago, but I fell in love, and less than 2 years ago I came to Canberra in pursuit of that. And my girlfriend found a job description. My background is was a teacher in autism, and my girlfriend found a job ad, and it was for a writer, and she said, "This sounds just like you." And the job application was to send in some of your writing. I write short stories just as a passion. So I sent in a couple of short stories, and 2 days later I had a job. And there was this technical person that was also part of my job, and she introduced this thing called Moodle to me, and we worked very happily for 3 weeks, and then she got another job. So I said to my bosses, "Are we finding someone to do that technical bit that she does?" And they said, "We're looking for someone." And I met her in the car park last week, and I realised that the someone was me. So here I am, just under 2 years later. I've done over 45 seminars on, I got onto the training programs anywhere, offered by every organisation that's been here, the 1 hour training programs. I've been writing Moodles and listening to Moodle seminars, finding out what it was I was writing to be launched in a couple of days. But one of the things that I realised listening to our guest speaker last night was that the horseless courage I need to be mindful of is how much of the teacher I bring along. And my journey really today is a talk about my journey, and one of my favourite tools that I discovered in Moodle and used early was the discussion forum. Because when you're a teacher, the discussion forum met all our criteria for best practice as causing engagement. So seeing that this tool was available to build into courses, and my client group, or my learner group, is the Public Service of Australia, and all the courses I write are for public servants. So looking at the discussion tool, I thought what a brilliant tool to cause engagement in the online courses that I am providing for the public service. And my worst fear, of course, in designing that was the fear of my discussion forum being silent or boring. So off we went. I've written, in that 18 months, I've written over 30 Moodle courses, and mostly my discussion forums went along really nicely until this year. And what happened is I had a group which I designed a program for, and some of the descriptions of this group is there was 49 people. They ranged in the age of 17 to 53. They were Indigenous trainees as part of the Closing Gap program, and they had a range of educational backgrounds. I designed a pre-survey for them to check what their literacy needs were. And what I discovered was that their learning backgrounds were anywhere from having completed Year 9 to university degrees. And we developed and designed a blended program with online learning, which I develop, and virtual classrooms, which I facilitate and write, and face-to-face sessions. They're located all around Australia, and so I thought I had it pretty well organised. And what I discovered in the pre-survey was how they love to learn was to discuss things, reflect, and then submit their work. So I thought, the discussion forums would be perfect. So 20% of their assessment was based on discussion forums. Now, in that intense 12 months of various programs, I'd used the discussion forum tool and used it successfully. So it didn't occur to me that what would happen is 6 weeks later, more than 80% were overdue on their first discussion forum, and there wasn't a word in there. It had become silent. So I looked at that and thought, well, what can I do about it first? So being a teacher, particularly from the background I came from in autism, where plan B was always the next plan, often after 5 minutes to the start of the day, I went and developed a strategy to deal with the quietness of the forum. So I put the topic into their next virtual classroom. They very happily discussed. The virtual classrooms, those learners are very strong in the texting format, so I then capture their text and post it on their eLearn site so they can capture their discussion, and very quickly they posted into the discussion forum. I also then developed a strategy which was, this is the question that they had. They had to look at values of public service and post what was important to them after watching a short video. So that's what stopped them. And then when they came to Canberra for their next face-to-face class, I informally interviewed them. And the key thing that had them stopped was their embarrassment. And their embarrassment came in two forms. The first was those that had lower literacy experiences were embarrassed about writing and exposing that to others. And the second group, for those that had very high literacy skills, was dealing with the embarrassment of going first and what people are going to say. So what I had done, my fundamental failure, is I had collapsed understanding verbal literacy as a way of learning and being in the comfort zone of verbal learning and feeling safe, because as a teacher, what you're always looking for to cause that zone of flow is the safety of learning, and that zone of risk-taking is what causes safety, so people are prepared to take risks, so people are prepared to go first, so people are prepared to give something a go. So I had collapsed their feedback from the pre-survey that discussions worked for them with the exposure of going first in the written language. So I collapsed those two forms of literacy. So I developed a second tip to scaffold and form the comfort zone in my course, which was Alive. And it's my top tips, the strategy. And what we did is we formed a communication plan so that automatically after a due date, if someone hasn't submitted, they received a scaffolding set of strategies to approach the assessment. And typically what we found in this course is it was around the discussions to build that confidence, to contribute into what is a very vulnerable environment for learners. So after that, I took a breath and reviewed, well, why do some of our other discussion forums work? And that's my analysis of what I did with that group. So the rest of this talk, I want to review some of the successful strategies we've been using, because I got caught by surprise with this group and had to think and unpack what had happened, because up until then the discussion tool had been very, very rich for us, and we'd had very successful learning and good feedback in our anonymous surveys by using the discussion forum. So some of the strategies we use, a lot of the courses I've written are for graduate programs for different departments, and the key thing that we do there is what we heard from the guest speaker last night was telling people what to do. And so in the instructions will be put something like this. So in your response, reply with a suggested strategy. So of course, people read just that simple instruction, and the discussion forums are rich. Here's a typical posting. Somebody's put their strategy from their workplace. And also, we build the discussion topics to what people are familiar with, so they're talking from their personal experience. So sample responses. We don't just get responding to other people in the discussion called great job, that's a great idea, but people will follow what we tell them to do. So telling them what to do in the instruction is something that works for us to create a rich response. Using a discussion forum that kicks off with an inspiring speaker. When we're working with diversity, we like to use TED Talks, particularly those that have been viewed and very popular around the world. That is a very easy measure of what might appeal to inspire ideas. In diversity, we often use talks by Temple Grandin, who really provokes the question of the world needing different kinds of minds to work together, which is a really great opening question to get into inclusivity in the workplace. So we always find that whenever we run a discussion forum with Temple Grandin featured as a speaker, we get a very fast response and a very inspired response. Another approach we take to causing engagement with learners is the brainstorm together before a major assessment. And one of our most successful ideas to date is we have a posting board. You could use a discussion forum or a wiki for this, and we use it before an assessment that involves a lot of statistics. And I don't know about you and your confidence in statistics, but usually in a group of learners there will be those that are very confident with statistics, and then there's those that are like, statistics, I'm not good at that. What we find is we use this discussion forum before a major assessment, and in this wiki they post, the criteria is simply to post 3 suggestions of how they'd approach the report. Those with a strong statistical background post very detailed and useful posts contributing their knowledge, and what we find is those that are new to statistical analysis rely on the input on this, if you like, brainstorm to produce their reports, and we have never had to have a resubmitted report, even for those new in the field of statistics. So we use the group to collaborate to benefit everybody in the production of their reports. And the final successful discussion forum that we set up and use is the mutual exchange. This is one I opened last week, and so far there's 6 or 7 topics there of people exchanging and using that focus on eliciting people's love of contributing to others. So, and my final personal strategy for success is call a hero. So, being an 18-month Moodler, I have access to a wonderful group of people, and instead of trying to work it out on my own, one of these people inevitably will have a call or see me each week as I brainstorm what to do to keep engagement in my courses ongoingly. So now I'd just like to have over to you about what questions or what ideas you have about causing engagement using discussions. And there's a couple of points I wanted to touch on during the discussion, if no one wants to go first. Yes?
Robin, have you found any differences in terms of participation and size of the group or size of the class?
Look, my largest class is 100 people, and I find the patterns very similar. There's a few people that will go first, and setting aside the exception this year that caught me out. So in the other courses, there will be a few people that will kick it off, and there seems to be a strong call always for people to look for a point of difference, and once they've found their point of difference, they then contribute. I think because of the instructions we write and where to think from, and we're looking for we look for how people feel they've contributed. It tends to get a good flow. as I said, besides the exception that made me think and review the whole discussion tool thing, I've never seen a pattern of slow performance and people unwilling to do it. And I think that key is setting up the instructions, and what we learnt yesterday, like they're telling what to do, like giving them a clear, sharp purpose as to what to do in the discussion. And we have found to get a good flow of ideas happening and people contributing to each other is giving a minimum number of posts. And people, why I like the discussion forums is they're some of the best, you can see the learning and the contribution, it's the best example of that. Someone else?
Sorry, firstly, to be able to, congratulations to get Indigenous students or even just Indigenous people to get past that shyness. It's a cultural thing, so to be able to get them into forums and to get them involved, engaged is obviously something that was you worked hard at. So congratulations at that. I've worked with Indigenous people, so that could mean and is often very, very difficult. My question revolves around eliciting that involvement straight away and other techniques that you may use. Do you use any sort of, I suppose, techniques of asking direct questions to people? Do you think that shuts them down? Knowing who is there in the forum and saying, hey Jeff, what do you think about this?
Well, I can tell you some of the things I do that are really successful. What's really successful with that group of learners is every 2 weeks I do a virtual classroom around Australia, and they have very strong feedback. Now, what I know works about that is I took off the, this worked technically as well, I took off them talking and I focused on text because they're very text conversant, literate. And so my virtual classrooms are text run, and I have a rule for myself that all that goes up on the screen is a question. So I'll pose a question and it'll be a scaffold, a series, a process. It'll be a question that I know that they'll have an answer to. And then what I do is I've got the group of learners and I'll have a question, or I might often I'll put 2 questions and I'll go, these people, I'll say their names, take this question, and then this group of people take that question, and then I've got them in the safety of they're in a group. And then what will happen is somebody will put an answer and somebody else from the group will say, oh, I thought of that too. I say, that's great, now what can you think of? So I give them, they start building on each other, so it turns into a facilitation with the group generating the answers. So I never give an answer. So it's questions. I start with questions I know that they'll know the answer to, and then once I see an answer that's particularly in the topic, I'll then talk questions to that topic. And then I'll see a reply and I'll say, that's a perfect thing to post in the forum, and then I'll give them, capture that, post it on their eLearn site, and then they've captured what they've written, what others have said, and then all the posts happen. So I would say if somebody was looking from the outside to what I said, they'd say that's a very scaffolded learning approach, which is my training. So I use that. I hope that answers your question in some way. Yes?
Thanks for that. It's very interesting. But just a question, this is, the participation in the forum is an accessible activity, and my experience has always been, if it isn't, nobody does. And sometimes, as you experience, if it is, nobody does anyway. But my question is, what are your criteria for assessing this as an accessible activity?
So,
how explicit are they? Are the assessment criteria, made very explicit to the student?
yes, in a rubric.
Right, okay.
So
What are they rubrics?
usually it'll be, number 1, it's on the topic.
Yeah.
Number 2, it's an incorporated a suggestion or a strategy. So it'll be very simple like that, but it's so I don't get the. You'll also get some very generous who will go around and say that one's great, I particularly like that, but their actual assessment post will also be there with their post that meets the criteria. Now, I work in a world of competent, not competent. But for that particular cohort, I do keep the criteria quite simple because of the range of learners. In the graduate programs, I will have more detail. It'll be on the topic. It'll be it might have an instruction to use a piece of legislation to inform the answer. And just going on that, another thing that I have recently started using, which I'm getting good informal feedback. I haven't formally assessed this through the feedback strategy because I haven't got there yet. The courses aren't at that point. But I'll do a rubric and then also connect to the instructions a learner checklist for the learners. Because I don't know about you on the Moodles, the rubrics are very long and they're sort of very assessor friendly. But for a learner to scroll down through all those instructions, particularly in my work health and safety courses where there may be a lot of criteria to meet in the rubric, I will also for the student have a learner checklist, which is just that one pager where they can just tick it and self-monitor. And I'm finding that a very effective twinning. So I've taken care of the learners and taken care of the assessors. So that's a nice use of those two tools together. I have had an interesting question yesterday about moderation, like how do I moderate all these forums. CRT Solutions, like those great people that are my heroes, has developed an excellent set of questions on code of conduct. And what you can do is put that in your entry box, what I call the top box, and make it a conditional release that someone's read those criteria, accepted them, and then they've got access to the course. One thing I'm going to do is, if that people are interested, is just pop that in the Moodle spot for this talk, that list of questions. I'm sure many of you have your code of conduct, but if you don't have one, I know one person who's interested in having a look at that so they can design their own, and I have permission to put that up there. So that's how I've never had any post that has needed any addressing, and I put that down to the use of a good code of conduct and good instruction. Seiki.
I just had a question about size. You mentioned a class of 100.
Yep.
And are they all participating in the one discussion? Because I find
Yes.
that the whole of class is problematic in terms of getting too many contributing sometimes too, if it is built into the assessment, and too many posts for them to read.
Yeah, what I put in the instructions is read at least 5 posts. And so being mindful that at this time there could be these 20 people working and then later on other people. So I treat it like they're mini classes. But also I do get good engagement on forums where people can contribute in, where the focus is just contribute to others and share. It'll always elicit some people who find something interesting and contribute. So they're one of those discussion forums isn't assessed, and that's the contributing one. Any other questions? Okay, well, if that's it, there's just a couple of things I wanted to... I've spoken about the Code of Conduct. The latest issue, the October version of the Australian Institute of Training and Development, is called Instructional Design. I'm sure most of you are aware of that, but if anyone isn't aware of that, that October issue is specifically on instructional design for online learning, so you may like to follow that up. Thank you very much for your time.
Now just some housekeeping before you run away. There has been a slight change to the program. Stephen Collins is unfortunately unwell and he's had to cancel this session next. So there's 2 parallel sessions. One is defence only. The other session is Kath Ellis, which is a qualitative session.